Hi guys, so I, 32, female, recently bought a house of my own. I invited all my family and friends over for a housewarming party a couple of days ago. I invited my parents as well, but I made sure to mention that only they were invited so my mother wouldn't bring her new family along. My parents had been separated for almost 15 years. Almost 2 years ago, my mother remarried to Carson. He has a 22-year-old daughter, Vanessa, from a previous marriage. Vanessa is spoiled, entitled, and everything that I hate. Carson isn't exactly a party to be around either, and it's pretty clear to me that they don't like me. So I obviously didn't want them to attend my housewarming party because it was an important event for me. In spite of that, my mother brought them along, and when I brought it up with her, she told me that she wanted me to bond with her new family and it would mean the world to her if we could all just get along. I didn't say much to her on that day because I didn't want to kick up a fuss on the day of my own party and just let it slide, thinking that I would deal with this later. But then Vanessa started talking smack about my house at the party to all my friends and told me that she could afford a better house on her salary, which was almost half of mine. That annoyed me, and I told her that she was welcome to buy a house of her own because I was sure that her parents would appreciate their 22-year-old daughter finally moving out of the basement. That earned me a lot of laughs, and she went completely red in the face, so I knew that she was pretty embarrassed. But she was the one who had started it, so I didn't really feel too bad about what I said. I had a lot of guests to attend to, so I didn't pay her much mind and went along to talk to other people. After the party ended, my mother lingered even after everybody had left, including Carson and Vanessa. I decided to confront her at that point and told her that I really didn't want her new family around. I was in my 30s, and I was old enough to know the kind of people that I wanted around me and the kind of people that I didn't. Her husband and stepdaughter unfortunately happened to fall under the latter category because they were really unpleasant and disrespectful to me. She told me to just give them a chance and then said that she wanted Vanessa to move in with me for a while because her new workplace was a lot closer to my place than theirs. She told me that if I spent some quality time with her, then I would come to like her, but I shot that idea down almost instantly because I could hardly even tolerate her for one evening. I couldn't even imagine the mental strength that it would take for me to tolerate her for an entire day or even more. She was bratty and had no manners at all, so I obviously didn't want her around, and especially not in my home, which was supposed to be my safe space. My mother tried to fight her way into letting Vanessa stay with me, but I wasn't ready to budge and told her that it was never going to happen, so she could save her breath. So she left in a huff, and I didn't even bother to talk to her afterwards because there was just no way that I was giving in to her ridiculous demands. But then yesterday, something even more crazy happened. I received a notification from the alarm company which said that my house had been broken into, and I immediately rushed back home from work, only to find that the locks had been changed and I couldn't even get in. I could hear people on the inside and was about to call the cops when my stepfather, Carson, opened the door and told me that I needed to stay out because that was my punishment, apparently. I was lost, and I asked him what exactly was I being punished for, so he told me that he wasn't going to refresh my memory for me, and I had to think of it myself. He'd had the audacity to give me a hint and reminded me of the instance that I had this disrespected Vanessa in my own home at the party the other day, and now he said that they were taking over my house because I'd already had the chance to agree to do it nicely. But I had refused and sent my mother home crying and all upset because of the way I'd behaved with her. Carson told me that he decided that I needed to be taken down a peg or two and he was going to make sure that it happened. I laughed in his face and told him that I was going to call the police and make sure that he was thrown out along with his daughter because they had absolutely no business taking over my house as if it was some stupid game. Then things got even more frustrating, and he told me that he knew I wasn't going to do anything of the sort because then my mother would be really upset with me and wouldn't ever speak to me again because I knew the kind of experience she'd had with cops and she didn't really like them. My mother had a really bad history with police, and she even hated the thought of having them, even if there was a crime that was being committed. So she really wouldn't ever forgive me if I involved the cops in this, and I was acutely aware of it. He even said to me that Vanessa apparently deserved to live in this house more than I did. Then left me on the porch and slammed the door shut in my face. I realized then that there was really nothing I could do except to call the police and hope for the best, because clearly Carson and Vanessa weren't going to leave on their own. So I called the police, and within an hour I was having them evicted from the premises, which was lucky because Vanessa had actually started unpacking her stuff. Carson could barely get over the shock of what had happened because he hadn't been counting on me to call the police like this, because of my mother's past experiences with the cops. I knew that my mom wasn't going to be happy about this, but I still did it. I knew she had trauma related to the police, but my hands were tied here. I really couldn't do anything apart from get the cops involved. I received a call from her about an hour ago, and she wasn't even mad at me, which I guess was more disappointing than if she actually had been pissed off. She sounded legitimately upset and told me that if I really didn't want to give Vanessa a chance to live with me and prove that she wasn't as bad as I believed she was, then I should have just called her and she would have put an end to it. But she couldn't forgive me for calling the police and having them evicted so nastily, like how I did. And told me that she wouldn't ever speak to me again because to her, what I did first was pretty much unforgivable. It broke my heart because of how sad she sounded, and it didn't feel like she was enjoying this at all. Usually my mother's all for the drama, but this time it was different. As if she was actually disappointed in me, and I couldn't take that. I apologized to her in spite of myself, knowing that I had no fault in any of this. But she still disconnected the call and blocked me. I feel terrible about what happened, but I really can't think of another way that I could have resolved this and had Carson and Vanessa leave my house and me alone without getting the police involved. It was the last resort, and I don't understand why my mother's taking this so hard. I know about my mother's past, and I know that it couldn't have been easy for her, but I feel like she's not looking at things from my perspective either, and being a little too selfish. I didn't intend to hurt her or bring up her past trauma. It just happened. And if she wants to blame someone, then shouldn't it be her husband and stepdaughter who went out of the way to mess with me and stir up trouble for themselves? I just feel horrible. I can't share what happened with my mother here because I don't think it's my place to speak about it, but I still need to know if I should apologize to her or not. AITA for calling the cops on my stepdad and stepsister in spite of my mom's bad experience with cops. Update 1. Okay, so I didn't want to talk about this because, like I said, I didn't think it was my place to discuss it without my mother's prior consent. But I think it's okay because this is obviously going to be anonymous and nobody will be able to figure out who she is just from one Reddit post. Besides, I think it's important to mention exactly why she was so traumatized by cops, because otherwise you guys won't have enough context to come to a conclusion regarding this. Like I said, my mother broke up with my father almost 15 years ago. Her first boyfriend after breaking up was a cop, and I guess you guys already know where this is going. He was literally one of the most toxic people that I, or literally anyone, could ever come across, and it was a miracle that he'd managed to string my mother along for more than 2 years. He used to put her down all the time and would make sure that he absolutely shattered her self-esteem. He'd also isolated her from pretty much everybody in her life, and she would meet me about once or twice a month while she was with him. And even then, she seemed very out of it, as if she wasn't even there with me. After almost a year, she was forced to stop seeing anybody at all because her boyfriend didn't like the fact that she still had ties to her past life and wanted her to give up all of that if she really wanted to be with him. He was jealous, petty, and insecure, and I don't think I would wish a boyfriend like that even on my worst enemy. The relationship ended only because he ran away with one of his co-workers in the middle of the night, and left my mother nothing but a letter saying that he didn't want to be with her anymore and had been having an affair for almost 8 months before he finally made a run for it. My mother was depressed for almost a year after that, and I don't know what happened, but she seemed to have developed a fear of cops and couldn't bring herself to trust them after that. It was crazy because one time she even lost her purse and refused to report it to the cops either. That's how deep-rooted her fear and mistrust was. And I guess you guys can imagine how betrayed and hurt she'd felt when she realized that I'd reported her husband and her stepdaughter to the police. That was the one thing that she could never forgive, and her family had pushed me to do exactly that one thing, knowing how badly it would upset my mother. I'm beginning to think that they'd actually planned this so that they could turn my mother against me once and for all, but I have no way to prove it, so I guess it's just my word against theirs. All I remember is that even though Carson seemed a little shocked to see the cops, Vanessa didn't seem flustered at all. But it's not like I can do anything about that now. All I can do is wish and hope that my mother comes around. Even if she doesn't, I'll be okay with that because I know that I tried my best to keep the peace. But her new family just wouldn't let it happen, and now it's her choice who she wants to stick with. Update 2. So my mother and I haven't spoken in almost 2 weeks after the whole incident. I bet Vanessa's pretty happy about all of this, if I'm to go by her social media. I don't follow her, but a friend of mine sent me a picture that she put up a couple of days ago of my mother, Carson, and her on a beach, chilling with sunglasses on, with the caption, "Just the fam recovering." I don't understand what she's supposed to be recovering from, because as far as I'm concerned, I was the one who went through a traumatic experience with her and her father. I talked to my dad about it, and he thinks that I did the right thing. What else was I even supposed to do in a situation like that? My dad even told me that a couple of weeks ago, before my housewarming party, she'd even approached him and asked him if he had any places in mind where Vanessa could live that were cheap and close to her workplace. My dad's a real estate agent, and he mainly deals with houses that are being sold and not ones being put up for rent. So he told my mother that he couldn't help her out unless she was looking for a place that she wanted to buy for her stepdaughter. And she told him that she would if it were up to her, but Carson didn't want to drop that kind of money on a house for a temporary job. And that made sense too. The thing that I was just upset about was that these were pretty bold words from a woman who refused to help me with my college tuition because she wanted me to learn to be independent and self-sufficient. But when it comes to Vanessa, there are a lot more allowances being made in comparison to how I was brought up and treated by my mother. Again, it's not even her own blood, but she seems to have a better relationship with Vanessa than she does with me. Even with this beach trip, my mother had always insisted that she didn't like the beaches and actually preferred traveling in the hills or maybe through the woods if we had to go on vacations or trips. I loved the beaches, but with her, I always had to compromise and settle for her choices because otherwise I knew that she just wouldn't go, and we'd end up canceling the trip altogether. So it just stings to see that she's ready to make adjustments for Vanessa, but she was never ready to do that for me. I didn't think that this post would bother me as much as it is, but I really took that one hard. It almost feels as if Vanessa has the mother and the family that I never did, because my mother was never willing to be that mom for me, and that hurts. I guess I'm going to talk to her when she returns, because I just can't stand this weird silence. Even if it is to tell her that she's really disappointed in me, and that now I don't want to speak to her again, I feel like we need to talk at least for one last time. Update 3. I told one of my friends to tell me whenever they think Vanessa is back from her vacation, and I learned that they came back yesterday. I don't know how I'm going to bring this up with my mother, but I know that I have to get through it somehow. She has blocked me on her social media, so I can't use that to get to her. But she hasn't blocked my number, and I guess I'm going to have to call her. It's going to be hard because we haven't spoken in almost 2 weeks and we aren't really on the best terms right now. My dad thinks that I should give it a day or two before I contact her, but I think she'll answer if I call her right now. She's probably in a good mood from the vacation, so that might lead her to accept my call or something. To be honest, I just want to do this because I feel brave right now and I want to rip off the band-aid as soon as I can while I still have the courage to do it. It's just been one day since I learned that my mother is back in town, but I almost feel like throwing up because what if she doesn't answer my call and this is it? I haven't done it yet because I feel like if she doesn't answer my call, then that'll be pretty earth-shattering for me. I've never had that great of a relationship with my mother, but it was a relationship still. So if I lose that, then I don't know what I'm going to do. Update 4. Okay, so I called my mother finally and I just got off the phone call. After talking to her for almost half an hour, she told me that she wanted to meet me in person after I was done saying whatever I had to say. It was mostly me who did the talking while she just listened to me quietly. It was pretty nerve-wracking to tell her exactly what I thought of her as a mother and just basically talk about everything that I'd mentioned in the previous updates, because that's how I really feel, and I think it was more important for her to hear that than for you guys. She didn't say much in response, but told me that she understood where I was coming from and wished that she had been a better mother the first time around. I didn't understand what that was supposed to mean, and I didn't ask either, because I want to save something for our meeting tomorrow. We're getting together for lunch, and I think it's going to be tense and awkward. Even if she isn't awkward, I'm sure that I will be, because even the thought of seeing her in person makes me very nervous. I keep thinking that I'm going to mess something up, and I don't know, maybe something bad will happen. Ever since she got married, I just keep feeling that something is bound to go wrong every time we speak. And so far, I've been right about that. I just hope that I'm not right about it tomorrow. Update 5. Hi, so I'm on my way back home from lunch. I can't go back to work because I really don't feel up to it anymore. I just feel like going to bed after drinking some wine and not doing anything for the rest of the day. My talk with my mother didn't go the way I'd planned or thought it would. It didn't go badly, we did sort out our problems, but the result was the same. This feels like a breakup, but much worse because it's not some stupid little boyfriend who's dumping me for a younger, hotter girlfriend, but my mother dumped me for her stepdaughter, whom I hate. I don't even know how to begin, but I feel like you guys have been here with me for most of the journey, so you deserve to know what happened. When we met, we hugged and everything, and it was nice and normal for a little while. But then we started talking about everything, and all the ugly feelings of jealousy inside of me came bubbling up to the surface. And I told her how I wished that she'd been the mother to me that she was now being to Vanessa, which didn't even make sense to me because she was an adult. But I was just a teenager when I needed my mom to be there for me. I told her that I felt like I deserved to be treated better by her in the past, and that it was really disappointing to see her turn into a completely different person for her new family, because I keep finding it very difficult to come to terms with her, since she should have been that person for our family. And yes, I'm in my 30s now, but it still feels like the younger me deserved a much better mother than her. The same person, but a different version of it. I could see her eyes filling up with tears while I was saying these things, and it was obviously very hurtful for her to hear it, but I couldn't stop and just went on and on. I didn't really know if I would ever get a chance like this, so just talk my heart out. So I needed to make the most of this opportunity. I made it very clear to her that while I did love her, I really did think that she could have been a much better mom to me because she owed me that. Once I was done talking, my mother told me that she truly was sorry that she never put in the same effort for me that she was now doing for Vanessa. She explained that back then she just wanted to live her own life. My parents got married when they were really young because of pressure from their families, and even had me at a relatively young age. My mother wasn't even ready to be a mom when she had me. But my grandparents forced her to take up such a huge responsibility of raising a child, even when she wasn't ready for it. When she got divorced, she finally felt like she had some sense of control over her life and became a little irresponsible. By the time her divorce was finalized, I wasn't even very little, and she felt like she could leave me on my own because she believed that I'd be able to handle it. But the truth was that she'd mentally detached herself from the family long before the divorce proceedings had even started. It was sad, but she just didn't feel like she wanted to be a mother and started putting herself first. It was selfish and immature of her, but she just spent so much of her life doing things that everybody else expected and wanted her to do. She just didn't want to deal with that pressure anymore and wanted to do things her own way. She wanted freedom for a while, and unfortunately, that came at the cost of our relationship. But now she finally felt like she was ready to have a family and take care of her people. So she was the mother that she never was for me. Only this time, she was being a mother to Vanessa and a wife to Carson. She admitted that I was right and that she should have been a better mother and wife when she was part of our family, but she got too selfish. And it just didn't work. I thought that now that we had cleared the air, we could go back to normal and we could at least try and build a better relationship instead. She told me that she believed it would be best for us to not talk to each other for a while and stay away because obviously both of us were going through a lot in our personal lives and she didn't want that stress right now. She thought that if we took time away from each other, then we would be able to come back stronger or something equally asinine. But I knew that the real reason she didn't want to talk to me anymore was because of Carson and Vanessa. They didn't like her being close to me, and I think by now it's pretty clear where her priorities are. So I wasn't surprised. But I was pretty let down because my mother finally had the chance to correct her past and be a little less selfish this time. But she still chose to remain the same way and let me down yet again. It's pathetic. But I really do feel bad because today I honestly felt like we were connecting on a human level. Evidently, I was wrong, and her owning up to her mistakes ultimately meant nothing because she was still going to give me the cold shoulder and act like I wasn't even her daughter, so that her new family wouldn't get too annoyed. It's fine, though, because now I know that my mother was never really going to be there for me. It's a little sad, but there's not much that I can do anymore. And honestly, she's let me down so many times already that now I don't even feel surprised. I just want to get on with my life now. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.